Hey everybody, this is Perch. Let's help Marvel again. Why not? No, I'm just kidding. This is an interesting mail. It's not really about Marvel. I mean, it is, but it's not. So let's take it from a different angle though. But let's read the mail and then think about this in the context of the broader comic book business. Okay? It says, "Howdy Perch. About a week ago, I got curious and broke down the ages of the bulk of the writers at Marvel and DC. I discovered that pretty much all of them were in their late 30s to mid 40s. Note that I sent the data and of names and their age to Zach, and that's the basis of one of his videos. Okay. By the way, it is peculiar. And by the way, I think that 30s and 40s people can certainly write good comics. I think that storytelling is not about age. However, I think Marvel has kind of sent the message out that they're hiring people who have a better handle on kids. By the way, I've not seen the Zach video in question. I'll write him a mail about it. But I think that like I'm thinking about Vita. And in fairness, Vita didn't say this. So this isn't on Vita. But it's on Marvel, who said, Vita knows how to write teens, really has the voice of teens in comics. And that's peculiar because Vita is not a teen or in her 20s or their 20s. What is she there still? There, I don't know. Anyway, that's not what Vita is. So it's peculiar that you've got people in their 30s, late 30s, and 40s, and Marvel's like, these are the people who know the voice of this generation. And you're like, nah, no. And nobody thinks that. Like the peculiar part of it is, if you look at the writers who are really successful in writing to that demographic, that are either working with Scholastic or working in YA, that have actually popular, really popular novels, or are working in Hollywood doing TV scripts, there's some people in their 20s that are becoming very popular writing for that demographic. There's a very small amount of people in their 30s, and like pretty much nobody in their 40s who's got that kind of aura about them. So to me, it's peculiar that comics is doing this, where they're like, no, we've got somebody who's perfect for that demographic, but they're completely outside of that demographic. It's very odd to me, I guess, is my point. So anyway, but that is definitely the case. If you look at that, it is thoroughly bizarre that when you look at the people that Marvel is heavily promoting as understanding the voice of the new generation, they are definitely not the new generation. And anyway, it's weird. It's quite strange. And let's get back to the mail. Anyway, by the way, and this is not, if it's me, like I'm not going out there saying, hey, you know what, I know how to 14. That would be creepy. Anyway, I know how a 14-year-old thinks. So I'm going to write those books that are great for a 14-year-old. Like that would be absurd. And for what it's worth, I'm not saying that people who are in their 30s and 40s are incapable of writing to that demographic, but it is peculiar that these comic companies promote writers that really understand the next generation when they are nowhere close to that generation's age, and the writing proves that. I guess that's the point. It's not like they're defying that expectation. The writing itself is often thoroughly tone deaf to that demographic. If you read, and if you read, I hate to pick on them. I hate to pick on them, and by them I mean one person, Vita. I hate to pick on Vita, but if you read New Mutants, and I have enough friends and others that like have teens or even people in their early 20s, where like this writing is cringe as hell because it's pretending like it speaks for my generation, but it does not. And again, that's not fair. Again, we have to be fair. Vita isn't saying this about themselves. This is usually the editors and people at Marvel saying this about Vita, which I feel like is setting Vita up for failure. Because like if you're saying like here's a person who really knows how to write that, I mean clearly that's not that's not what's going on, then what are we even talking about? Does Vita believe that they are good at that job? Anyway, I don't know. I have so many questions I have here. Anyway, let's continue to the mail. It says the big reveal is that there is a missing generation of comic book writers at the big two, which led me to a few questions about what happened to considering the historically legends like Jerry Conway, Jim Shooter, both started writing comics in their teens, in Jim Shooter's case, early teens. Roy Thomas, Frank Miller, and so many more writers that started writing at the big two in their early 20s. It's hard to rekindle that shift when the fact that Vita Ayala started working in comics in her, you mean there, bigot, no, I'm just kidding, in their 30s and turned into a forgettable work. Why doesn't Marvel? This is the idea. So you may, by the way, disagree with everything you just heard, and you're like, no, I don't, whatever. But here's the big idea. And I think that this big idea is a reasonable idea and certainly fits within the business model of, Marvel, DC, other comic companies that are, trying to save money and, do their thing. So you're ready for, here's the big idea. It says, why doesn't Marvel hire broke college students to write comics? It will allow the big two to pay them less than what they do Vita. And what's Vita? Like Vita's making $70 a page, somewhere around that range. I mean, that's not good money, but sure, you're right. You could go to, in fairness, if you're, and who knows, with our new progressive society, I mean, Marvel, I think, could go to like the University of Colorado in Boulder and hand out weed in exchange for comics. You wouldn't have to pay anything. Well, I mean, you have to buy the weed somehow, but I mean, it wouldn't be hard in Colorado. But I mean, and maybe it'd be cheaper, frankly, to pay $30 a page. People will take it. Anyway. Pay them less than they do Vita and justify it with a lack of experience. Therefore, they would try harder in an attempt to prove themselves. I'm not sure that outcome would happen, but okay. Is it because of Marvel's ego preventing them from discovering the next great writer? I don't think it's ego. I think it's lack of. So that's the entire mail. So I don't think it's legal. Ego. It's not. I don't think it's legal. It's not legal. I don't think it's ego. I think it's lack of imagination. I mean, look, the way that a lot of people are getting hired in Marvel kind of comes into two camps. One, I think I really respect and appreciate. One, I think is a little weird. So the one I respect and appreciate is, you get writers who get a reputation for doing good, solid work, who turn in their shit on time, and they just, they're pretty there's no real drama, non-drama, and they just put in work and they get paid. And I don't mean to drag, him into this, but like Jim Zub is an example of a guy who you give him money and he gives you a script, usually to the best of his ability, and maybe you like it, maybe you don't, but he turns in a quality script, he turns it on time, and he gets a reputation for somebody that when you say, hey, I need a pitch for something, he gets his shit done. And it comes in on schedule, and usually tries to kind of reach out to the artists and say, here's ways to make your job easier, and that's what he does, and that's a very legitimate, good reason to be employed by a comic company. That's what comic companies should do, and I think that the more of that, the better. Definitely comic companies need just good, reliable people who turn in scripts and get their job done on time, and that's it. And then I think there's the other pocket of people are people, and there's a third category we'll get to in a second, but the second pocket of people represent people that the editors know. So these are friends who they used to work with in a comic shop, which is the case with certainly several of the writers there, or people that they're friends with on Twitter, and they're trying to give them some kind of little throw you a bone, and that's the other way. And that model, for lack of a better word, the nepotism model, it's funny because I'm going to say that's usually a shitty way. However, several of the writers who are proving themselves to be responsible and good, they certainly got their start by, try to be friendly to the right people, work a relationship, and then get shit done. The problem is there's people who are hired who work the relationship, don't get shit done, and just generally trying to live on as a pal of the editor, and that's how they get their work. And that model sucks, and it generally produces pretty crappy results. I said there was a third category. Third category are people who have risen to be big enough that they make the company money, but maybe they're pains in the ass to work with. I mean, just I'll let your imagination run wild on that one, but that there's a category there for those people too. My belief is that over time, over the long run, and history proves this out, the writers that are just good, responsible people, turn their shit out on time and try and be good employees, tend to be the same people that you are still working for companies 10 years, 15 years, 20 years later. And the people who are hired via nepotism tend to burn out. And the people who are pains in the ass tend to burn out. And that's, unfortunately, the coffers are refilled with new hangers-on and douchebags, but, that is what it is. I always respect people who actually try and get shit done and do things the right way. That's my hat's off to those people. But it would be, I think that if you're Marvel or DC, and there is a hardship in going out and hiring, generally your risk assessment is going to want to pay people who are proven in some form or fashion, and oftentimes the relationship, even if the writing skill is unproven, creates enough of a hook that people will keep their jobs. But I think that it would be wise, particularly if you're going to try and promote the fact that you're reaching a certain generation. It would be wise for you to go out to colleges. Sure, I mean, why not? You'd get work for cheap. The funny thing is, though, it would cost you more. And this is the weird way the company works. If you're an editor and you're making, I don't know, too little money. Let's say you're making $36,000 a year, which is some of the junior editors make. You make $36,000, and your job is to get some talent in. And your options are go do the homework to go to a college and find some people and bring them in and take them through the process and all that kind of shit, and then hope that they turn in a script and then do that. Or you reach out to a buddy you used to go to the comic store with who kind of wants to write comics, but maybe they suck. And you go, hey, you're going to turn in a script because you know me and we have this unspoken relationship where you're not going to completely fuck me. So, you'll do this. And there you go. That's how the staff, if you're making that kind of money, then you're going to take the easier route. I mean, it's time expensive to go to a college, try and figure this model out and everything else. The problem is everything I just said is pretty short-term thinking. If you're thinking long-term value, you would go to the college and you'd find these people who are, unproven talents. You'd sign them for cheap. You'd get relatively cheap labor. You get very passionate people because they're just excited to do work, and they're at that age where, the glory of the work is more important than, money. And you could work that for a few years. The software industry does that notoriously, and it's very successful. Game industry does too. It's been a very, very successful model. The challenge is, you have to have employees at a comic company that are thinking long term. And many of the editors, employees at Marvel, DC, and I know this for sure because, I've chatted with several of them, they don't view themselves as still working for that company in 5 years. They view themselves as getting enough experience, enough stuff on their resume, they can move on to the higher salary, bigger, better things. And when you're thinking short term, and the company is not paying you long term, and there's no long term incentives, there's no stock options, there's no hook to keep you with the company, it means one of two things are going to happen. Either the employee is going to go off and find work that pays more than $36,000 a year, which is not hard to do, or the employee is going to stay at the company because they couldn't find another job when a full-time position at Starbucks would probably make them more money at a assistant manager level position, which are probably not the employees you want. So that's where the dynamic comes into play. This all sounds extremely critical, and I'm sorry for that, because I do think comics are valuable, and I think the companies need to survive, and I think they should pay their people more, and I think that they should try and recruit more talent, and but most importantly, they should give their employees an incentive and a dream to think longer term. And some employees, if you give them that upside, they will get better, and others won't, and those are the employees you fire and you move on. That's how legitimate companies work. Comics is in the state of arrested development where, and it breaks my heart because you've got creators who fucking love this industry and love making comics and just want to do amazing work. And they're saddled with this backdrop of a completely broken financial model and hiring model that ensures that the people with the least amount of fucks to give about the long term are the people who are making the decisions. And this is thoroughly broken. I know I've done the video before and you got to pay people more, and it always sparks a lot of controversy amongst you. But it in many ways, take the money out of it. The key is, if you want to, this is a completely non-controversial statement, unless you are a jackass. If a company wants employees to think long term and invest in themselves and the company to build value, you have to give those employees a long term incentive to do so. And that can be financial, it can be security, it can be insurance, it can be options, it can be any number of things, but you have to provide that. Long-term incentive means the company is buying into the employee long-term, and the employee is going to buy into the company long-term. It's a give and take relationship. If you give the employee no incentive to be around long-term, you're going to get shitty employees. You're going to get people who do not care, who are there as a rest stop, or you're going to get people who are burned out losers who can't get something better. And by the way, I want to make it 100% clear, there are absolutely people at Marvel, DC, other big companies who are not burned out losers. There are definitely people who are there. But the thing you're left banking on is passion. And God bless passion. It's an awesome fucking thing when you get an employee who cares about the long term and are willing to self-sacrifice to do it. These are the true believers. And they are amazing people who will work tirelessly. You ever have somebody in your company who they're not being paid for overtime, but they're doing it anyway because it's the right thing to do? Those people are incredible. They're also rare. If you find one, you hold on to them. But it all leads back to the same place. If you have an employee that's doing stuff like that, any smart company is going to go, there's no way I want to lose you, so I'm going to give you money or options or long-term incentives. They're going to do that because they recognize the value of this person who cares so much about the company that are willing to take sacrifice to do it. And a company that's not smart enough to do that is a fucked up company that deserves to die. So that's the scenario we're in. Should a company go out to college students? Why not? Sure, it will certainly be a better hook to speak to today's youth if you do that than whatever the hell they're doing now. And again, if you're in your 30s, 40s, or whatever, there's amazing writers out there that get shit done, do a great job. That's certainly possible, but for Christ's sake, you got to pay them. And you got to make it a place you want to work. And when you don't have that, you get people who don't give a shit. And we've seen plenty of examples of that. And by the way, it's not to say these people don't give a shit about anything. Several of them absolutely give a shit about getting to Hollywood or getting a Scholastic deal. You know how many writers you would know, writers that YouTube, people shit on a daily basis, have said, to me or to a friend directly, I can't stand working for Marvel and DC. I'm only doing this until I get a Scholastic deal. You know how many have said that? A lot. A lot of the people you hear every single day on these channels have said that themselves. So what do you expect is going to happen? They don't want to work there. They want to get someplace bigger because they want to get paid. And here we are. So anyway, sorry, I went, I went astray there. Anyway, thank you very much for the mail. And Yeah, I don't know. What's going on in your heads when you listen to these videos? Is it like, there's Perch running his mouth again? I don't know. I'm just, you know, I don't know anymore. Fucking Texas. Thanks for listening.